Do you remember that sermon? Well, today we're talking about a fun topic called dating. And I think we can go a little deeper with this whole drunken love thing. I think there's more there. A few weeks ago, we talked about being drunk in love, and it was about a guy named Samson. And today we're going to talk about someone else who was drunk in love, who most of you probably already guessed. I hope you saw that up there. Who's one of my favorite characters in all the Bible. Like I always say, other than Jesus, this guy is probably my favorite character. You're right. His name is David. King David, to be exact. And the story that we're going to look at today, I don't really like to read. I don't really like to preach. I don't really like to even acknowledge that it's there, because this is my hero of the Old Testament on one of his worst days ever. Turn to your neighbor and say, worst day ever. Worst day ever, like when there's no milk left and you want cereal, kind of worst day ever. It's bad. I hate that. But it was one of his worst days ever, so I don't really like to acknowledge this story sometimes, but I believe that there is life-changing truth in this story. If you have your Bibles, turn with me to 2 Samuel chapter 11. 2 Samuel chapter 11. Today, I guess the subtitle of the message, we are in the Made to Love series, and this is Drunken Love Part 2. But also, if you're taking notes, you want to write a kind of a subtitle heading. That would be a Chaser. Be a Chaser, if you're taking notes. And we're going to look at a guy, David, who he fell drunk in love. He did so many things right. This is David, the king, the greatest king who ever walked the earth. He was a man after God's own heart. He went places that only he could go and did things that only he could do. He did the impossible because the God inside of him made him do the impossible, led him to do the impossible, and allowed him to do the impossible. The little dude defeated a giant. He was a shepherd boy, got anointed king at like 16 years old. He defeated enemies. He defeated armies. He went all over the place. He did all these incredible things, greatest king to ever walk the earth other than Jesus. And yet he still fell into a trap that so many of us, I believe, fall into, and that is being drunk in love. A few weeks ago, it was Samson. Today it's David. 2 Samuel chapter 11. It's a long story, so I can't read all of it, but I'm going to give you some background after I read a little bit. 2 Samuel chapter 11, starting in verse 1. In the spring, somebody say in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. They destroyed the Ammonites and besieged Rabbah, but David remained in Jerusalem. One evening, David got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. I really wish my house had a flat roof that I could just go chill on and walk around on and feel like all, like kingly like him, but I don't. So it said that one evening he got up from his bed and walked around on the roof of the palace. From the roof he saw a woman bathing. Everyone say, oh. He saw a woman bathing. The woman was very beautiful. And David sent someone to find out about her. The man said, "Isn't this Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite?" Say, no, he did not. Then David sent messengers to get her. Say, double no, he did not. She came to him and he slept with her. Triple no, he did not. Woo! David is digging himself a hole. She had purified herself from her uncleanliness. Then she went back home. The woman conceived and sent word to David saying, I am pregnant. Say, serves you right. No, don't say that. Don't say that. That's messed up. That's messed up. So David caught himself in a situation here. Turn to your neighbor, say, it was a situation. Hey, have any of you ever been in a situation? You've been in kind of like a little, it's okay to raise your hand. I'll raise mine. I caught myself in a few situations. David caught himself in a predicament, a situation. Everything seemed to be going well, and then here's the curveball. What happened with David? He caught himself in a situation. So David, out on his roof, he sees this, what the Bible says, beautiful, so a fine girl taking a bath down there. Okay, he sees her, then sends someone to find out more about her. Turns out it's one of his friend's wives. Just in case you didn't know, the person who she was married to was one of David's best friends. That's messed up. Yeah, he's scandalous for that one. It's one of his best friends and one of his best soldiers in the army. That's who this girl was married to. Okay, so this was a big deal. David was dirty for this one. So he brings this girl in, he sleeps with her, he gets her pregnant. Then later on in the story, he tries to cover it up. He brings her husband home from the battlefield, brings him home and says, listen, you've been doing real good. Go home and spend some time with your wife tonight. Because he had hoped that the dude would go home, sleep with his wife, and when she became pregnant and announced it to everyone, oh, it's Uriah's baby, it's not David's baby. See, he tried to cover it up. But Uriah was such a good soldier that he said, listen, King David, mind you, this is the king. Listen, King David, all of our men are out sleeping under the stars in the open fields. They're all out there in the battlefield working hard. I can't go home and sleep with my wife tonight. That'd be messed up. I'm a soldier. I'm with them in spirit. I can't be with them in spirit if I'm at home in bed with my wife. That's not going to work. So he didn't even go home. He slept right outside the palace. He didn't go home. David tried it again. He got him drunk, tried to get him to go again. He wouldn't do it. Uriah would not go back. David was pushed to the limit. Out of desperation to fix this situation that he was in, David, he sent an order back with Uriah, gave him a note. Uriah took it to Joab, who was the leader of the army. The note said, hey, put Uriah at the front lines, go and attack these people, then pull back and let Uriah get killed. Yeah, David was messed up. I mean, he was deep right now. He was deep. And that's what happened. And the man died, and then with no Uriah, now David could just take this girl Bathsheba, and it would be his girl. But God is not about that business. Turn and say, God is not about that business. God is not about that life, because God then said, okay, David, you want to play games with me? Here's what I'm going to do. The kid that's going to be born to this chick that you invited over to your house to sleep with, yeah, I'm going to kill it. And God did it. He did it. See, things were a little different back then. That was before Jesus. And so there wasn't the same, things weren't the same. The principle rings true all the time, though. And so God took that baby, and it ended up being a tragedy. And this moment that, in actuality, should have been one of David's greatest moments, one that he would be able to put up on the shelf as a trophy moment, it wasn't a trophy moment. It was the biggest blemish on his legacy that he ever had. Because not only did he commit adultery and sleep with his boy's wife, it wasn't even just his girl. That was his wife. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. They had a baby, and that baby died. It was a tragedy. And see, it all started. The way that David fell drunk in love, the way that he ended up in this situation, the way that he ended up in this tough spot or predicament is because David was chasing the wrong thing. See, I think it's good to be a chaser. David was a chaser. He chased down his enemies and gutted them like a fish. David chased down Goliath. He was a chaser. He was crazy in an awesome way. But in this story, he chased the wrong things. See, here we see David in verse 1, he chased comfort. We see David chasing comfort. If you look at verse 1, it says, in the spring, at the time when kings go off to war, David sent Joab out with the king's men and the whole Israelite army. David was supposed to be at war. David the king was not supposed to be in his palace. But in this moment, he chased comfort. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. He chose to chase comfortability and chase the confines of his palace, of his castle, sitting in there comfortably. That is what he chased. And the thing about comfortability is that when you chase comfortability, it leads to vulnerability. If you're taking notes, write that down. You chase comfortability, it leads to vulnerability. Because you see, David, he chased the comfort of his own place. He didn't go out and do what he was supposed to do, and it caused him to be vulnerable to seeing that chick bathing, which led him into the situation. And see, relationships, they're not supposed to be comfortable. Regardless of what the media tells you, regardless of what your friends tell you, regardless of what people around you tell you, relationships are not supposed to be comfortable. Have any of you ever gotten in a relationship because it was comfortable? Don't raise your hand. I'll raise it for you because I have done that. I have done that, and I know none of you have ever done that. Hashtag sarcasm. I know none of you have ever done that, but sometimes we get in these relationships just because they're comfortable. We get in these relationships just because we know this person will text us back. We know we can Snapchat this girl because we know she's going to get back to us. It's comfortable. We know she's going to be there. Sometimes we get out of relationships and we start going after God, and then the next thing we know, We go back to those relationships because it was comfortable to have a man there to comfort you. It happens a lot. We get in these comfortable relationships, but relationships were never meant to be comfortable. I can tell you this out of my own experience. There are other girls in this world that would probably be more comfortable to be with than my wife. Let me explain. My wife challenges me. She makes me the best that I can be. She makes me better. She challenges me in ways that no one else on this earth could probably challenge me. And I firmly believe that God brought us together because He wanted me to make her better and her to make me better at chasing after God. That's what I believe. You ask a married man, Ray, a good relationship, is it comfortable?
It's a lot of work.
See, and it's not comfortable all the time. It's not always comfortable because you're growing. A healthy relationship will make you grow. But so many times we go back to that comfort. We go back to what feels comfortable instead of what is best for us and what will make us grow. And so what I'm challenging you to do, and what I think David missed and what he didn't do here, is that instead of chasing what is comfortable, what if we started chasing the calling? See, David chased what was comfortable and staying in his palace rather than chasing his calling, which was out on the battlefield with his men. And see, at the middle of that calling, smack dab in the middle of that calling, is Jesus Christ. So when you chase your calling, what you're really doing is chasing Jesus Christ. And I'm telling you this, when you start chasing what you are called to do, God will introduce you to the one that was made for you. I'm confident of that. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But we've got to stop in our relationships. We've got to stop going after what's comfortable. Because you see, another thing that happens in a comfortable relationship is that a high level of comfort usually leads to a high level of boredom. If you're taking notes, write this down. A high level of comfort usually leads to a high level of boredom. And a high level of boredom usually leads to a high level of stupidity. I will tell you this. Some of the dumbest things I've ever done, some of the stupidest things I've ever been a part of, some of the most foolish things I've ever seen, they spawn from boredom. When people get bored, they do dumb things. When I was playing basketball, we traveled all over the country. And you get a bunch of guys traveling in hotels all over the country, sometimes it just gets foolish. And one time specifically, we were in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we were bored one night. And listen, this is something I'm never going to get. But, okay, there were a lot of white guys on my basketball team, I'll say that. And white guys, when they get bored, they like to wrestle each other. It's the weirdest thing. Like I don't know. I honestly don't notice that with brothers, but with white guys, they like to take their shirts off and get sweaty and wrestle around. I'm not for. To me, that was weird. I said the same thing. I'm like, why do you want to wrestle? That's weird. Like, you're all sweaty, rolling around. We got bored in a hotel room. What do? They start wrestling. It stunk in there. It was sweaty. But the bottom line, we tore that hotel room up. I mean, that hotel room was destroyed. There were broken pictures. There was blood on the carpet. There was blood on the bedspread. There was blood on some people's clothes. I had to go to my coach and somehow convince him to give me the keys to the bus to go get the medical kit. Jacob Brown had to tape up this dude's leg. It was bad. It was bad. And it was stupid. And it spawned from boredom. Because in relationships, a lot of times we settle for something that's comfortable. Then we get bored. And the next thing you know, we're just trying to do something to keep us energized. We're trying to do something just to keep us occupied, and we end up doing things that we regret, with people regret, in places that we regret that we're going to. That's what happens when we get into a comfortable relationship. We start to get bored. We look for other things to make our relationship interesting. And David, at this moment, I believe, he may have even been a bit bored. Late at night, kind of restless. He knows he should be out on the battlefield with his men, but he's at his palace. And so he gets up and he goes for a stroll at night. And it's crazy because when we were talking about Samson, I said that when you go to places that you're not supposed to be, you end up meeting people you're not supposed to meet. You remember that? Remember when we talked about that? He went out on the top of his roof and he looked down and he saw that woman, Bathsheba, bathing, taking a bath. And see, that night, when he went out, he saw something that he was not supposed to see. He was never supposed to see her because he was never supposed to be on that rooftop that night. You're supposed to be in the battlefield. He saw something he was never supposed to see. And when we see things that we're not supposed to see, we start to desire things that aren't meant to be. I promise you, the next time you think of looking something up on the internet, let that preach to you. It will. Because I'm telling you, when we look at things we're not supposed to see, we're going to start desiring things that aren't meant to be. This was not meant to be because, truthfully, David was supposed to be out there winning a victory. This is kind of a side note here, but you notice victories are never won in our comfort zone. You never win a victory in your comfort zone. Victories are won in the battle zone, in the war zone. And see, because David refused to go out to the battle zone, he ended up suffering not a victory that he would have got in the battle zone, but he suffered the greatest loss of his entire life right there in his comfort zone. Because not only did he cheat with somebody, he also lost that baby. And so he saw something he was never supposed to see. Made him desire something that wasn't supposed to be. And what that was somebody else's wife. Somebody else's girl. So if you're taking notes, I guess this would be number 2 if you're making bullet points. He chased after, first of all, comfort, when he should have been chasing after the calling. Second of all, he chased after something that was not his. He chased after what wasn't his. That was one of his boy's wife. It wasn't one of your boy's girlfriend or chick. It was his boy's wife. She had a ring on it, okay? They're trying to start a family, and this dude, straight home wrecker, okay? It was a big deal. And he started chasing something that wasn't his. And some of you look at that, I think most of us do, and when I was your age, which was only a few years ago, I did too, looked at this story and, man, I will never do that. I would never do anything like that. I would never go after somebody's wife. I would never go after somebody else's girl. I would never go after somebody else's man, if I was a girl, but I'm not. I'm a guy, so I didn't really have that thought. But we think we'll never do that. But the truth is, our generation is doing it all the time. I'm not trying to put anybody on the spot, but I have seen things on Facebook, I've seen things on social media, I've seen things from students in this room that would lead me to believe that they got something shady going on the side. And see, the thing we got to remember is that our dating lives are practice for our marriage lives. Your dating lives is practice for your married lives. If you think that the things you do right now won't affect the way you act when you're married, you got to be out of your dang mind. You got to be kidding yourself. I've been married less than a year, and I can tell you this. It took me time in dating with my wife when she was my fiance. All that she can tell you, I struggled sometimes. I had some issues I had to work through. I had to get things right because I had messed it up in times past while I was dating, and it will affect it when you get serious. You think, man, now I'm just kind of clowning around, I'm just having fun. Listen, it leaves a lasting impression. It will change the way you treat the person that you're serious about if you're screwing around with the person you're not serious about. That's real. It stays with you. And you wonder why the divorce rate is so high. You wonder why so many couples are getting divorced inside the church and outside the church. It's because we're not practicing as if we're practicing for the real game. We're practicing as if we're practicing for practice. Every sports team I've ever been on, they tell me, hey, you got to practice the way you're going to play. You got to practice to win the game, and you practice how you play. It's the same way with music. If you're going to perform anything, it's the same way with a play. If you're trying to remember your lines, it's the same, anything. If you're on a debate team, whatever it is, the way you practice, your coach has probably said you practice how you play. In dating, you practice how you play. And so many of us think, man, well, if we can just kind of date whoever we want right now, and it's okay to have a sideline chick or a sideline man. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I'm sure that some of you in here know somebody, we'll just say that, you know somebody who has either been a sideline chick or a sideline man, or you know someone who's had a sideline chick or a sideline man, right? You're probably thinking of somebody in your mind. You're probably thinking of that, but the truth about that is this. Listen, if you have a sideline relationship now, if you're chasing after things like David chased after something that wasn't his, if you have a sideline relationship now, eventually you will be sidelined. Because you see, if you got a sideline relationship now, eventually you're going to be somebody's sideline chick or sideline dude. I'm a firm believer that when Scripture says you reap what you sow, you reap what you sow. I believe that, and I stand on that. So I think that you'll be sidelined in the way that you'll probably be somebody else's sideline. And I don't know about you, but I never wanted to be that person. The main one. I never wanted to be the sideline. I wanted to be the main one. but you will be sidelined. And not only that, if you think it's cool to have sidelines now, if you think it's all good and you're going to have as many chicks on the side or as many dudes on the side, or even if you're trying to get someone to make you their sideline, whatever it is, eventually you will also be sidelined, standing on the sideline watching everyone else meet the person that they were created to meet the person that was created for them, and you'll be stuck there. And you'll think, what's going on? I don't understand this. Here's why. If you got a relationship of chasing what's not yours, that reputation will chase you for a long time, and no one's going to want someone that always wanted something that wasn't theirs. You'll be stuck on the sideline, guys and girls. And this is kind of another side note, but I have to say this. Some of you have maybe even been the sideline. Some of you right now are maybe even trying to be the sideline, trying to break somebody up because you want to be with that man or you want to be with that girl. I got news for you, ladies. If he will cheat with you, he will cheat on you. Fellas, if she will cheat for you, she will cheat on you. It's not worth it to try and break somebody up because you want to mess with their girl. Not worth it. Because guess what? She'll end up doing the same thing to you that she just did to that other dude. He'll do the same thing to you he just did to that other chick. We got to start chasing the right things. We got to start chasing after what we already have. See, David chased after what he didn't have, chased after what wasn't his, chased after what is yours. Because regardless of where you are, regardless of how immature you are or how mature you are, regardless of what you're into, regardless of where you were yesterday, regardless of what you said 45 minutes ago or where you were last night, doesn't matter. Right now, in this moment, you have the opportunity to chase Jesus. Chasing your calling, that means chasing Jesus. Chasing after what you already have, that means chasing Jesus. And if you keep your head down, and you do what you were created to do, it won't be long before God will lead you to the person He created for you. I believe that because it happened with me. When I finally got smart and put Jesus where He was supposed to be as the only thing that mattered above everything, then He led me to the girl who is now my everything along with Jesus. It happens. That's real. That's not just a fairy tale. If you chase Jesus, I'm confident. You chase Jesus like it's nobody's business, God will make it His business to introduce you to the person you're supposed to be chasing. It happens. That is real. And to fall in love with somebody who loves Jesus, is the most incredible thing. See, because falling in love with somebody who loves Jesus, it's not the person that makes me whole. It's the Jesus inside of the person that will make you whole, that makes me whole. The Jesus inside of my wife is really what makes up the other half. And I'm the same way for her. I can't offer her anything, only what Jesus has given me to offer her. And see, it's incredible to love someone who loves Jesus like there's no tomorrow, because when you love Jesus like there's no tomorrow, when you love someone who loves Jesus like there's no tomorrow, it will change your forever. And see, when you follow somebody like that, you chase after somebody who really loves Jesus, and you love Jesus yourself, eventually something's going to happen. You're chasing after somebody who loves Jesus. You're chasing after someone who's chasing after Jesus. It won't be long before you both end up at the feet of Jesus. And at the feet of Jesus is where the impossible becomes possible. People who have no business being together, they end up together because Jesus is Lord and His power can make a way where there is no way and bring two people together that people said were torn apart. Jesus is what you should be chasing. Jesus, God, at this point, is what David should have been chasing. He missed opportunity. He ended up making the biggest mistake of his life. And it cost 2 lives, Uriah and the son that was born to David. And see, I'm confident that when we chase a relationship that is not of God, it won't be blessed by God. You may think that's a joke. It's not a joke. I've been there. You chase a relationship that's not created by God, that's not of God, it's not going to be blessed by God. And I don't know about you, but I want my relationship to be blessed by God, because if it wasn't, man, I am a sinner saved by grace. I would be making so many stupid decisions, going stupid places, talking to people I shouldn't be talking to, if it wasn't for Jesus and his grace. That's the only reason that my marriage is even a success up to this point, because of Jesus. That's it. So if you don't have Jesus' blessing on your relationship, it's possible it can work. I've seen a few older couples who have been together for a long time that never acknowledge Jesus, but it's rare. Most of the ones I know put Jesus first, and then Jesus allowed the relationship to flourish. Chase after Jesus. Be a chaser today. Be a chaser in your relationships. Don't chase after the comfort, chase after the calling. We've got to stop chasing after the comfort that is around us. We've got to start chasing after the calling God has put on us. And don't chase after what is not yours. Chase after what you've already been given. And when you're given that person that you really think is for you from God, it's God ordained, this is the person I'm going to spend my life with, chase them with all of your heart. Chase them like nothing else matters besides them and Jesus. You got no business looking left or right because you don't want what other people are bringing anyways. You want what God is bringing to you through that person. I'm going to ask Pastor Kevin to come up here, and we're going to do something a little bit different here in the next few minutes. And I'm going to spend some time talking with the fellas. So if you guys would kind of just turn your attention over here, and I'll kind of direct you in just a second. But Pastor Kevin has something that he wants to address with the ladies. And let me just tell you, you need to listen to this. This is important. This is very, very important. This is heartfelt. We've spent time talking about this. I know his heart behind this. He means what he's going to say. Okay? I promise you this. So just, you don't need it. You got it? Okay. All right. Okay. Fellas, turn your attention over here. You guys can actually come up and get over here if you want. Just come circle up over here.